Hello. The following is a case study of vocal maintenance of singers on a national Broadway tour. The intent of this study is to understand more fully the effects of frequent travel and demanding schedules on vocal function and maintenance of professional singers employed on a national Broadway tour. The study is a qualitative study with multiple data points. Surveys were administered to all 4 participants after the last performance at each location of the tour in the US. Semi-structured interviews were conducted with the participants. Due to the challenges of the coronavirus, only 4 locations were utilized due to the closing of venues. The lead performers were of the same national Broadway tour and were identified by the extensive singing demands of their roles, coupled with the demanding tour schedule of 8 shows a week. Vocal health literature, while expanding, still has its limitations. Singing is highly variable, creating challenges in collecting data. With this in mind, most literature on vocal health is anecdotal, and there are no direct studies from a national Broadway tour. To create a portrait of each participant, the interviews covered the topics of vocal maintenance, vocal practice, overall health, and challenges of touring. Amanda was a 31-year-old female with an MFA in acting. Prior to starting her MFA, she had vocal damage, which was treated by a top otolaryngologist in New York City. This is her first national tour, and her role requires her to sing at the extent of her vocal range, sustaining a very high belt production as well as screaming. Her main strategy for vocal maintenance is steaming. She steams every night for 45 minutes before bed and steams again when she wakes up. And sleep is also imperative and a benefit of touring since she has more time to sleep. Her vocal practice occurs in her dressing room, but she really credits vocal maintenance as her main strategy. Amanda said the weather was a big challenge because the tour locations happened to be in cities that were unseasonably cold and wet, so she was in that similar climate for over 3 months. She also found establishing a sense of home to be very difficult, and she tried to fix this by setting up her nightstand in each hotel in an identical fashion. Being away from loved ones was also challenging, and she expressed relief that the tour was over, saying, "It is not for everyone." Joseph was a 30-year-old male with a BFA in musical theater. This is his first national tour, and his role requires a large singing range as well as speaking in an accent. His main strategy for vocal maintenance is hydration. His first question in every new theater is, "Where is the water? How do I get access to hot and cold water?" He warms up in his dressing room, but this routine varies and is based on the weather and the theater. He also avoids eating a large meal before each show and credits sleep as the best way to maintain overall health, as well as a clean diet and exercising as much as possible. He actually travels with an exercise bike so that he can get aerobic activity regardless of the weather. Joseph said the inconsistency of the living and working space is the biggest challenge. The location of his dressing room was different in each theater. For example, 6 floors above the stage in one city. And in this place, he had to leave his dressing room earlier to make his entrances on time and not out of breath. He also noted that 1 week is not enough time in a place to establish a routine, and it's hard to find the motivation to use his free time for enriching activities. George was a 39-year-old male with a BFA in musical theater. This is his second national tour, and his role requires forceful speaking as well as beautifully floated singing. His role also has an hour-and-a-half break within the show, so he has to maintain his voice backstage. And unlike the rest of the participants, he drives to each city with his wife and toddler. His main strategies for vocal maintenance are hydration and reducing his vocal load by speaking gingerly with his family members throughout the day. If he doesn't, he can feel tired during the show and he knows he talked too much. And for anybody who's been a caregiver for a toddler, that challenge certainly makes sense. He warms up in his dressing room with exercises that have adapted based on the needs of the role, and he also avoids eating a large meal before shows because it feels like there is a huge weight in the place where I need to breathe. George also stressed his vegan diet and daily exercise for crucial aspects of maintaining overall health. George travels by car instead of by air, and this is another vocal maintenance strategy. And he noted that this was utmost important when the coronavirus pandemic was starting, and he expressed relief to not have to fly with his family. George reported that adjusting to the weather was the biggest challenge due to walking to the theater in extreme conditions and the adverse effects of heat and air conditioning. and he discussed adjusting to these different theaters in terms of their acoustics and backstage spaces, again, mentioning the theater with the dressing rooms on the 6th floor. He also mentioned wanting to stay up after a show and socializing, but knowing that he cannot do that every night and still maintain his vocal and physical health. Due to the impact of the coronavirus, singer number 4 was not able to complete the interview portion of this research. From these interviews, several commonalities emerged. The participants mainly credit hydration, sleep, reducing vocal load, and scheduling of meals as strategies for vocal maintenance. They utilize their dressing room to warm up directly prior to performances, and this warm-up routine is adaptable. However, the participants stress vocal maintenance as their most important strategy. For overall health, the participants all reported daily exercise, a healthy diet, and sleep as imperative for their vocal functions. Adjusting to the weather, different living spaces, and different theater spaces were the most challenging aspects for touring. It is also important to recognize the emotional challenges of touring that the participants expressed, such as isolation and family demands, coupled with performing challenging vocal roles every day. It is also of note that singers were not in consistent contact with a voice teacher and did not report using voice lessons, dialogue with a voice teacher, or specific teacher-guided vocal exercises as a vocal maintenance strategy. And this finding presents an opportunity for voice teachers and touring productions themselves to be more active in providing vocal support for singers who are performing in a challenging environment. An interesting outcome of this research is that when the participants were asked if their strategies to maintain vocal health and overall health on tour were different from their behavior when they are in a non-touring show, they all responded no. As George stated, this behavior is fundamentally ingrained in me so that I can do any work at any time. To add to the overall understanding of the singer's vocal function on tour, the research survey consisted of 5 questions about tour location, transportation, housing, theater space, and tour schedule. Similar to the results of the interviews, the weather had the biggest effect on the singers when compared to the other categories of allergies, humidity, and altitude. For housing, all categories affected the participants, and they were active in selecting their housing in each city, aiming for spaces with kitchenettes and within walking distance of the theater. For the theater space, all categories affected vocal ability. The acoustics of the theater space could help or hinder vocal production. As one participant said, "Not great acoustics. We can't hear ourselves very well, resulting in pushing sometimes." But in a different theater, the acoustics were excellent for such a large house and really allowed me to not work as hard to hear or be heard. 2 remaining categories of the survey, travel and tour schedule, were not prominently discussed in the interviews, but from the survey data, the length of time in each city was perceived to have the greatest influence. The first 2 stops of the tour lasted for only 1 week, and the participants reported being tired from the quick turnaround, coupled with a lack of sense of community in the city. Some major takeaways from this research are that the participants were very focused on maintaining vocal and overall health by using hydration, sleep, diet, and exercise daily. However, this focus was fundamental to their persistence as professional musical theater performers and not specifically unique to their work in a national tour. Performing in a national tour can present unique emotional challenges for maintaining personal relationships and creating a sense of community. And perhaps of most import for the voice community, singers were not relying on personal voice teachers or vocal lessons provided by the touring company to help with their vocal practice and maintenance. This absence suggests an opportunity for voice teachers and the musical theater community to offer and advocate for more vocal support for performers on a Broadway national tour. This research has presented a baseline of information about vocal maintenance of singers. This research intended to include data from additional tour cities. However, due to the coronavirus, the national tour associated with this research closed in March. When this research continues, having data from additional tour cities with varied climates, a larger population of participants, and a specific interview protocol investigating the vocal demand of participants' roles will present beneficial guidelines to voice teachers, professional singers, and aspiring singers currently pursuing a musical theater career. And thank you very much for your time.